All right. Well, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. I'm joined by former college football star Todd Reesing. Todd is widely regarded as the greatest quarterback in Kansas Jayhawks history, holding multiple team records and famously leading Kansas to a victory in the 2008 Orange Bowl. Additionally, he later went on to play professionally in the Canadian Football League. So, Todd, thanks for coming on today.
Ben, thanks for having me. Really excited about the conversation today.
Yeah. So, just to start off, how did you even get interested in football to begin with?
I grew up in a big sports family. So I had an older brother. We were highly competitive with each other. As you can imagine, we're only 2 years apart. So we spent most of our childhood fighting each other, battling, competing in sports, wrestling, all the things that two young boys do. Both my mom and dad, they didn't play, collegiate athletics or anything, but they always, sports is always a big part of their life as well. So I think for me, the earliest memories of football are just backyard, pickup football that we used to play out behind the elementary school in the
Yeah.
neighborhood I grew up down in Austin, Texas. So you get the guys from the neighborhood together, go out there and really just play some backyard football.
That's always the best way to play any sport is just the
That's right.
backyard games. So what brought you to the University of Kansas then?
Yeah, so my ties to Kansas was kind of an interesting story in how I got connected to the University of Kansas. My godfather, his son, he played football at the University of Tulsa. He married a girl whose dad was a former coach at Kansas and was at that point in time when I was being recruited was working in the athletic department. So that was back when we had VHS tapes. So we had a bunch of VHS recorded tapes of my highlights from high school along with my resume. And me and my parents were sending it out to as many schools as we possibly could, primarily in Texas and the Southwest, Southeast, places I thought I might have a chance to go play at. So once I had that connection to Kansas, I sent along my tape, and that ultimately reached the hands of Coach Mangino and Coach Tim Beck, who was responsible for recruiting in Texas at that point in time.
Yeah. So did you know much about Kansas at all before you
I had
went?
never been there. No,
You never been there?
I knew nothing about it. The first time I went to Kansas was actually to go to a junior football camp at Kansas State University back when Bill Snyder was the head coach.
Okay. Yeah.
And Kansas State was actually the first school that offered me a football scholarship when I was a junior at Lake Travis. It was while I was at the camp in Kansas State where I got a call from Coach Mangino and the KU staff and asked me to come visit Lawrence while I was already in Kansas.
Wow.
So it was kind of an interesting timing where they finally got in touch with me as I was already in Kansas, and then I went down, met with Coach Mangino for the first time right after attending the Kansas State football camp.
Yeah. What surprised you about the state of Kansas versus maybe like what you kind of thought the state would be like? I don't know if you had an impression in mind before you went
That's
there.
a great question, Ben. I don't think I had a prior
Okay.
expectation for what to think about Kansas. I mean, they say it's statistically flatter than a pancake, and I think
Yeah.
that very much holds true. After having now spent a lot of years and a lot of trips back and forth driving from Lawrence back home to Austin, it's a whole lot of nothing for a long period of time and a whole lot of crop fields and farms that you drive through. But that little northeast corridor in Kansas where Lawrence is and parts of Kansas City is actually a really beautiful part of the country. And Lawrence itself, the campus sits up on a hill in Lawrence. It's one of the more beautiful college campuses I think you can come across. So I think seeing Lawrence after being in Manhattan, Kansas at Kansas State, I was like, wow, this is an upgrade here. Like I
Okay.
much prefer the vibes here in Lawrence. I much prefer the red and blue, the crimson and blue colors to the purple and white. So I think from the very beginning, I was already leaning much more towards being a Jayhawk than I
There
was a
you go.
Wildcat. Yeah.
Is there like now I lived in Lawrence for a year.
Okay.
Um, did you was there a particular spot that you like were very fond of in Lawrence, Kansas, maybe to eat or something like that you went to?
Yeah. I mean, the place that myself and a lot of the guys I played with, we'd always go to Johnny's Tavern
Okay.
pretty much after every football game. So that became like, the unofficial place for all the football players to go hang out. We knew a lot of the
Yeah.
people that worked there. So it was like a safe space, quote unquote, for us to go hang out, even after a loss and not be hounded as much as we would have been in other places. But, the wheel up there is very well known as well. You got to get some wheel pizza from time to time or get their
Sure.
famous cheeseburgers. So Those are probably the two places I spent a lot of time at in college.
Yeah. How do you think, spending time in Lawrence, Kansas, shaped you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think those college years obviously play a big impact on your growth as a young adult, right? I mean, I think playing athletics in college, forces you to adapt a lot of skill sets. I think have carried through to where I'm at today, both as a both professionally and personally. Being forced to have to adhere to a very strict schedule, have discipline to show up for your workouts, trying to balance having both the pressure of performing on the field with the pressure of performing academically in the classroom. Really, I think makes you grow up a lot faster, maybe more so than your typical college age students that doesn't have as many of those types of responsibilities. So I've spent a lot of time talking with people about this over the years. I think there's so many attributes and skill sets that you learn playing any sort of sport at a high level. Even in high school, you can learn a lot of those attributes that I think become foundational for you in the rest of your life. And I think so. Doing that in college, having a coach like Coach Mangino, that was a bit of a disciplinarian. He
Yeah,
wanted you to do things by the book, do them the right way, go to class, make good grades, be an upstanding citizen, a good young man in the community. So I certainly think that a lot of those skills, a lot of that time is spent balancing academics and sports at a high level, really help to shape who you are and how you're going to perform when you're no longer playing sports and you're dealing with real world problems, which in reality are much more difficult than what you
right.
deal with in playing football and having to make 6 a.m. workouts.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I do think like playing sports growing up for anyone is a great kind of introduction to life in many ways. The pressure to perform and do something successfully, and the adversity you have to overcome when you're playing sports. Because it is kind of a way, just like a little glimpse of real life challenges, just in a way that you can make mistakes, and the stakes may not be so high. So
Yeah. Although, someone might argue that the stakes feel even higher performing
yeah,
on the football field than,
they
trying to meet
certainly can be.
trying to meet a meeting deadline or get a
Yeah,
document into your boss at a certain point in time versus, trying to perform in front of 100,000 people and not mess up when the game's on the line. So different
that's
kind of
true.
pressure, but both have their roles.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be someone who's got like a big potential contract on the line, and then you screw it up. So
Yeah, exactly. They both have bad implications for sure.
exactly. So did you ever, what was your expectations for success when you went to Kansas? Like, did you foresee having the career you did when you first arrived there?
I always had a lot of belief in myself. I think you have to have confidence to perform at a high level in athletics as you do in anything else in life. And I think I always had that self belief and felt like I had the ability, I had the work ethic, I had the mindset to be able to perform at a very high level and play with anybody else out there in the country. Um, I'd probably be lying if I said I thought that I was going to have that type of success
Yeah,
at Kansas. I mean, I think we all want to shoot for the stars, but
yeah,
I think for me it was much more starting at small goals, right? Getting to Kansas, at the time, Kerry Meyer, who is a close friend now, but was kind of coming in, being hailed as the franchise, like the future of Kansas football. Big name recruit, extremely talented guy, had all the characteristics of a very successful college NFL quarterback. So, from day one, I was like, man, I've got an uphill battle that I have to face here. Like, am I even going to play? Like, I wasn't concerned about like setting records or winning Orange Bowls. Like, how am I going to get on the field and get a chance to prove myself and earn a starting spot so that I can go out there and compete? Because at the end of the day, as an athlete, all the goal, like everything that you set from a record standpoint, the success your team has, like that doesn't matter. All you want to do is play. Like that is first and foremost like the ultimate goal. I want to get on the field and show that I'm supposed to be here, that I have
right.
skill set, that I've got talent, that I can go out there and compete with the best in the country. So I think from day one, that's where my mindset was. Like I got something to prove. Like I got to prove that I can beat out this guy that's an extremely talented player, that I can earn the respect of my teammates, that I can earn the respect of the coaches, earn the trust to be able to lead this team on the field. That was step one. So I think once I was able to kind of accomplish that goal, you get a little bit more confidence in yourself, more confidence in the team. You see that people begin to believe in you as a leader, as a quarterback of the offense and of the broader team. And then from there, then you can really settle in and really, begin to set your sights higher. And I think for me, my focus was always team oriented. I never set out to set records or be remembered like this or like that. And my goal was that what can I do to help my team win? And
Yeah.
I think in any successful team, that has to be the mindset of everybody from top to bottom. Everyone from the person in the training staff to the person serving water to the head coach, right? Everyone is there as a collective, as one big organization, one organism, trying to find a way to find success as a team because that's the ultimate goal. I think football is the ultimate team sport. You've got so many different people, so many different moving pieces of the puzzle, and everyone's got to do their job. And as the cliche saying, you're only as strong as your weakest man, but it really is true in football. Like
Yeah.
whatever success I had is a reflection of, my preparation, the offensive line, their preparation, receivers, running back, coaches, the defense. So it all kind of plays together. But I think the big focus was always what am I doing today to help my team? How am I
Yeah.
getting better so that I can help myself and help my team succeed and find, and be able to accomplish the goals that we set out to accomplish.
Yeah, I think football. One of the fascinating things about football as a sport is just how much strategy is involved in it. I mean, it is just incredible. Like all the different plays and formations. That's just one of the exciting aspects. Is you really have to
We've got
keep
our
track.
own language that we're using out
I
there,
know.
tickling
That's right.
things, right?
It is
Yeah,
crazy.
I think for people that maybe aren't as familiar with football, that's one thing that I've always tried to communicate or explain is I think football is the most mental game there is. Now it's known as a very physical game, and it is certainly that. I've got plenty of
Sure.
lingering injuries that could probably point towards that being a true statement. But and especially at quarterback, but that's not to take away from other positions not being not also requiring a high level of sophistication, of preparation, of mental execution. But it really is. I mean, the amount of preparation you have to put in, studying film, understanding the offense, understanding what the rest of your teammates are doing, what the defense is doing, what their blitz packages might be. There's just so many different inputs and variables, and you have to assess, evaluate, and make decisions in an instant of time. Right?
Yeah.
These decisions are happening at such high speed and with such velocity that the only way you're able to execute at that level is through intense repetition, doing it over and over and over again, seeing it, visualizing it, which is why you always watch so much film and you're out there practicing. And it's not like other sports. It's not like you get to go out and say, all right, we're going to do this 200 times this year. No, like you get 12, and of that you're playing half the game. So like it is a very few number of reps you actually get to go out there and show how well you can execute, which is why I think it's one of the sports that requires such an intense amount of preparation before each game.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about like leading up to the Orange Bowl, and when you're preparing for that game, how aware were you of just how important that game was to the University of Kansas football program and its history?
Yeah. Well, I think we all understood, the pain and suffering that a lot of fans had gone through for a lot of years and not having a program be at the level where we were competing for championships, going to BCS, bowl games, going back to the Orange Bowl for the first time in 40 years. So by that point in time, I was certainly aware of the history of Kansas football, and they've got amazing fans up there in Kansas that, despite a lot of years of teams that had a tough time, achieving winning records, they were always very loyal fans, and you see how much joy it brought to people that had been lifelong diehard Kansas fans to see Kansas up there achieving a number 2 ranking, be undefeated, being talked about on ESPN and across the country. So I think going to that Orange Bowl game, we knew that we were on the cusp of the best season in the university's history. I don't think that was our focus. I think everyone on the team would probably agree. I think most of us were still just pissed off that we lost to Missouri,
Yeah.
which gave us the opportunity to be undefeated for the regular season, which
Yeah.
would have given us a chance to play in the Big 12 championship, and a win there would have taken us to the national championship. Now,
Right.
we weren't dwelling on that, but I think there was still, despite the fact that we were 11-1 and had put together this amazing season. I think a lot of people across the country, whether it was media, fans, or otherwise, still thought that we weren't that good, that we were overrated, that we hadn't played enough good teams, or that our season was somehow a fluke. So I think inside of our locker room, what the coaches communicating, we were all extremely focused on ending the season on a high note because we still felt like we had something to prove. So I think the
Yeah.
way that we approached the preparation before the Orange Bowl, how serious we took, not going out at night and getting into trouble in Miami before the Orange Bowl, which I'm
Yeah.
sure could have
Good
been
idea.
easy to do. And so I think we all went in like hyper focused on our preparation because we wanted to end that season with a really good taste in our mouth. And give the fans at Kansas something to be really proud of for the end of that season.
Definitely. When you reflect on the Orange Bowl, how do you think the meaning behind bowl games has changed over time with the playoff format, obviously being implemented after your playing career?
Yeah, I think the actual bowl you go team seems to be less important
Right.
nowadays, right? Because I think like when I'm watching games, I'm like, oh, they're playing in a quarterfinal, they're playing in a semifinal. I'm not saying
Yeah.
they're playing in the Rose Bowl or they're in the Sugar
Right.
Bowl, right?
Yeah.
It's when you have a playoff format, it's really like what stage of the playoff are you in, right? It's like March Madness. Like no one says,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're at the game, they're playing Sweet 16 in Kansas City, and then no, they're just playing Sweet 16. Like
Right.
yeah, so I think some of that, the legacy of playing in certain bowls likely is fading as the focus shifts more towards the format playoff. I think most people would probably agree that a playoff format is great, right? It's exciting because, hey,
Sure.
the number 8 team could win, right?
Yep.
Like I think giving more teams an opportunity to showcase if they have the best team when it comes down to it in a playoff format is really exciting. I think for the fans, for the players, and so it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. Like, do they expand that playoff even more? Like, where does it stop there, right? At some point, you can't have these kids out there playing 18, 19, 20 games to determine the winner. So I don't think we're ever going to all agree on what the right format is or how you rank the teams or,
Sure.
does a conference championship get you automatically in? What about non-power 5 teams? There's so many inputs. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision because I don't think you're ever going to please everybody on that front.
Yeah. Now, when you were getting ready to leave Kansas, what were your plans at that point? Like, what were you hoping to do?
Well, I wanted to keep playing football.
Yeah.
To be honest, now I went and played at the East West Shrine Game, which is an opportunity for senior players to try to get exposure and recognized by NFL scouts to try to get either invited to a training camp or ultimately drafted would be the preference. Obviously, neither of those happened in my scenario, and I think I was a little bit ahead of the time when it came to small quarterbacks. At
Sure.
5'10" with not the strongest arm or not the fastest guy out there. I don't think I was going to wow anybody in person with my prowess. I was certainly more of a gamer. So unfortunately, I didn't get an opportunity to attend an NFL training camp, which is why I ended up pivoting and then taking an opportunity with the Saskatchewan Roughriders up in the Canadian Football League, which ended up being a relatively short-lived expedition up north before I got released from their team. And again, part of that was kind of luck and timing, which is kind of how the cards play out sometimes in professional sports. You kind of got to be at the right place at the right time to get an opportunity. I feel like I had the talent to be able to play up there, but ultimately it just didn't line up for me in that scenario.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, did you like consider other like career options as well, like during your college career? Like, oh, like if I don't do this, maybe I'll do this instead. Like, what's the kind of mindset like for
Yeah.
someone in that position?
My mindset was always life after sports.
Okay.
I grew up where academics was extremely important. My mom came from was a teacher, came from a long line of educators. So having good grades, focusing, prioritizing academics was a non-negotiable in my house growing up, and I'm
Sure.
very thankful that my parents raised me that way. So all throughout my time in Kansas, and I was very much focused on, what's my career going to be like professionally after the end of sports. And I think if I could certainly advocate or communicate to kids going through college nowadays. That's where your focus should be. Even if you play in the NFL and you make it to the top of the league and maybe you play for 3 or 4 years, I mean, the reality is that money is only going to last you so long. You're still going to have to get another job that you're going to end up doing for decades longer than your sports career. So I think getting good advice on preparing for the future after sports, no matter what sport you play, even if you play at the highest level in the professional leagues, you should always be thinking about what am I going to do after? What are my skill sets? How am I setting myself up to be able to have a successful life, personally and professionally, after sports are over? So, I double majored while I was in Kansas at economics and finance. I actually worked part-time as a teaching assistant for a finance professor just to.
Oh, wow.
This is before NIL though, Ben. So I wasn't getting a couple $1 million a year.
Sure, yeah.
I had to work a finance TA job to get a few more bucks for beers at the bar.
Yep,
So
there you go.
times were different back then than where they are now.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I remember, hearing at some point, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I remember hearing at some point long ago that when you were on the bus to like games or something, you were reading like The Economist or something like that magazine, or
I had a subscription. I think someone asked me about that at some point in time. I think that's how that information got out. But
yeah,
I mean, as an economics major, that was kind of my reading of choice back in the day. Which, thinking back, that was very dense reading for like a college kid to be like.
That's my point. Yeah, exactly.
Economist. Like, I don't even know if I would read that nowadays, and I'm still in the world of finance. But yeah, that was something that I used to read all the time. Again, I think it was at that that period of life where I was a sponge and trying to learn as much as possible. And when it directly relates to the fact that you're having to pass economic exams, I think it potentially could help out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, I don't imagine there were many college football players reading that.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah. I don't know how many I actually made it through from like start to finish. Like, those things were thick. Getting through one is like, that's a full month of reading.
That's true. Yeah, I think probably most people kind of pick and choose their articles there.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure I was the same way.
So, how do you think college football has changed then due to NIL and the transfer portal?
Well, it's changed a ton. I mean, it's been a significant change. I mean, I think it's wonderful that a lot of these young kids are being able to capitalize on, all the hard work they put in for years to be able to play at a high level. And obviously they're driving significant revenue for these college, athletics departments and for the universities on a broader level. Do we have the perfect and best system? I don't know. I'm not intimately involved. I know a lot of people are that probably have a much stronger opinion on the direction things are heading. I do think, just from a personal opinion, the transfer portal has certainly opened up a scenario where there's not much loyalty to universities. It used to be if you committed somewhere, you 99% of the time you stayed at that university. Like, if you left the team, it's like you were no longer playing sports anymore. You left for personal reasons. But all this hopping from one school to the next 3 years in a row, it just never happened. So I think locker room dynamics have got to be changing. I imagine it's harder to kind of maintain that team culture if you have a lot of people coming in and out. Like, if someone has a breakout year, like, are they just going to leave to go take a bigger paycheck at a bigger school? Probably. Right. And like, I don't blame these kids for doing that. I mean, if you look at, the ability for these kids to monetize their athletic performance, especially if they're like where I was, where you're on the cusp and probably not going to make it to the NFL. But if you can go make $500,000, $1 million in college, like, why wouldn't you do it? You'd be dumb not to. I mean, you put that money away in the markets after you graduate and don't touch it for 20 years. Like, you're retired when you're 40 if you tuck a couple $1 million away when you're early in your lifetime. So, I think there needs to be some sort of regulation around the transfer portals. I don't know all the ins and outs of kind of how this stuff is playing out in real time, but it's obviously very top heavy, right? I mean, you look at Michigan in the NCAA basketball tournament. They had the highest payout to their roster of like $10 million of any team in college basketball, and they won. You look at like Miami, they spent a ton of money. They made it to the semifinals in football. So like you're seeing teams that have deeper pockets, which were already the teams that were successful in the first place, are
Right.
now being able to invest more, recruit and lure away top ranked players or top transfer portals from other universities, and they can rebuild programs overnight. So we'll see if that trend continues. I can't imagine it won't. Right? People are going to follow the money. It's a
Yeah.
tale as old as time, Ben.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I certainly hope there continues to be parity. I think we'd all love a scenario, often like you see in the NCAA basketball tournament where you can have smaller schools that can make a run to the semifinals and into the quarterfinals, so that it's not always the same teams winning over and over again. I think we all get sick of seeing the same 3 or 4 teams win the national
Yep.
championship every year. So having Indiana win, I love that storyline. I mean, the way they rebuilt that program, what they accomplished the last 2 years was incredible. The way Fernando Mendoza, played, just a great story there. So I hope we see more storylines
Definitely.
like that as opposed to more storylines of the same big name schools winning over and over again.
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of the evolution of the transfer portal, NIL, and its impacts on college football. I know I know there's been lots of fans that have kind of been disappointed to see so many players come and go, and the idea of that kind of school spirit kind of disappearing a bit over time. So it'll be interesting if they can find a balance
Yeah.
where everyone can kind of be happy to a certain extent. So, when you reflect then back on your career, and you think about that historical era of college football, what do you want people to understand about what it was like to be a college football player at that time?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think it doesn't necessarily have to reflect on that particular period of time in college football. I think anyone who's played at a high level, anyone that's played college football, anyone that's played any collegiate sport, being able to compete at that level, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like there is no better feeling, there's no better adrenaline rush than being out in front of 50 to 100,000 people and throwing a touchdown pass or making an interception or whatever it might be. Insert sport, insert big play here.
Yeah.
That feeling is something that is hard to replicate, and I think that's a big reason why you see so many athletes try to hang on for as long as they can in their career. Like, why does Tom Brady need to play till he's 45? It's because there's nothing else you can do on earth that's going to give him that feeling.
Right.
That's exactly why. Like, he doesn't do it for the money. Like, it's because he loves it. Like,
Yeah.
it's his passion for the game, the camaraderie of the teamwork. Finding success, the getting the W stacked up. So I think that is really my biggest takeaway is just, what a privilege and joy it was to play. I mean, I think about what I do now in my life and like, there's nothing that comes close. Like if I could go back in time and throw on a helmet right now and pad up even with a couple torn rotator cuffs, like sign me up. Like I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's kind of what I think about, most about back in that time, is, just how much fun it was, just what a privilege it was to get to play football at a high level and find success that few teams get to find.
Do you think the culture of college football when you played is different than from today?
It would be hard to make a more than just a guess, right? And
Okay.
because if I'm not, in the locker room, interacting with the team, interacting with the
Yeah.
coaches on the campus, like it would just be an outsider's opinion. I can
Sure.
talk about like my view on how I think NIL has impacted things, but that
Right.
may
Right.
not be the truth of what players are feeling. Because there's
Yeah.
probably a lot of teams where the money may not be a big conversation. There's not a whole lot of transfers coming in and out, and they have the same feeling that I had, which was a band of guys together working hard, trying to accomplish their team goals. And maybe the other stuff is just like outside their periphery. And I would imagine the coaches and people in the athletic departments are doing as much as they can to keep kids focused on that, right? Because the rest is just distractions. NIL money, sponsorships, commercials, like whatever else might be going on. Like ultimately, that's not where the focus needs to be for these players. It needs to be on, how do we make our small improvements every day? How do we work towards our team goals? How do we make sure we stay on top of our academics? And I know a lot of universities are putting plans in place to provide more financial advice for these young players, certainly that are coming into money. many of whom probably have never had access to that type of money before. And I think that's extremely necessary and prudent, right? Because when you come into money at that age, certainly if it's a significant amount, you see time and time again that people don't get good advice, they get taken advantage of, and then that money's gone overnight. And that's why you see something like 85 to 90% of like NFL players are broke within 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Like you make tons of money, but if you don't manage it properly, if you don't have someone that's giving you sound advice, all that hard work to reach the top level, and the next thing you know, you're back at the bottom, having to find a job like everybody else. So I think instilling those principles and having that conversation with young kids in college is something that should be paramount for these universities.
Yeah. Yeah, it is always amazing just how easy it is, no matter what your income level is for most people, unless you're making like billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But you can outspend your income. It's amazing how easy it is to do that.
I think you see it no matter where you look at.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if someone gave me $100 million, like if I needed to, I could find a way to spend it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard.
No, there's always
I don't
something.
think it would be necessary by any means. I think you could certainly do everything you'd ever want to and more. But yeah, listen, there's houses that are $100 million out there, so you can definitely do it, right?
Absolutely. So, what are you currently working on today? What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I'm back home in Austin, Texas, where I was born and raised. All my immediate family is down here as well. I joined a firm called Cap Six Advisors, based out of Houston, Texas. We are a U.S. equity separate account manager, so we've built out a fully integrated research, construction, risk management, tax management platform that my partners have spent about 5 years developing. And so we run a handful of U.S. equity portfolios through that research engine that we've architected. And so I focus mostly on sales, marketing, distribution, working with financial advisors across the country to find good partners to help bring our solutions to their clients.
Yeah. So all that education at Kansas paid off.
There you go. Now, I didn't get any NIL money, but I got a good education. Ultimately, that's what's serving me now in life, and that's what's been most important.
Do you have a favorite sports moment at Kansas and a favorite academic moment?
Sports moment. I think the sports one's easy. Listen, winning the Orange Bowl was great. The Orange Bowl win has got to be number two, but number one, as I think most Kansas fans would agree with, is what we call the pass. It was against Missouri, so 2008 season. They beat us the year before, the year we went to the Orange Bowl, the 07-08 season. So that was our only loss for the year. So we wanted some revenge. And then it was the second year we were playing at Arrowhead, which is the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium. So it's half crimson blue, half black and gold in the stadium. So absolutely incredible environment to play, like a split crowd. And, that's the border war, so it's just a huge rivalry. I think it was snowing that game.
Yeah.
They were higher ranked. I think I don't know if we were ranked at that time at the end of the season, but we wanted to kind of upset their, they had a really strong season going. So we wanted revenge from the year before and to kind of play spoiler on their season. And I think the last 6 minutes of the game, there was 4 touchdowns. So it was back and forth. It was basically like, who's going to get the ball last? And we ended up getting the ball back with about a minute and a half to go. And it's like a dream scenario for a kid that grew up playing backyard football down here in Texas. Like, I want the ball in my hands in the fourth quarter with under 2 minutes to go, and I got to lead the team down to drive to score a touchdown and win. And so we ended up driving. We got down to the 27-yard line. I think there was 27 seconds left on the play clock. 4th and 7. We call a timeout. We all huddle up, and I was going to Kerry Meyer, who was, converted to receiver from quarterback. And I don't even remember this. My coach told me this like 6 years later, that apparently, like, while they were trying to call the play, I kept going to Kerry, hey, Kerry, if they go cover 0 and they blitz, just break free. And like, I don't even remember saying that, but apparently I was like already planning ahead if the play didn't work. Anyways, they did blitz everybody. We picked up a big block, and then I ended up lofting a pass as I stepped up in the pocket as Kerry broke deep, just apparently like I had told him before the play ever happened. And it just became a huge moment for Kansas football to get that massive win, get the revenge over Missouri from the year before.
Yeah, pretty epic game for sure. Um, and on the academic side, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, well, graduating and getting 2 degrees, I think
Yeah,
that's a
it's
big
usually a good one.
accomplishment as well. But I think a better one would be I got my name in one of the finance textbooks because my finance professor who I was working with, she was kind of writing new scenarios and case studies, and so she used my name in a handful of those. Just Todd, but she told me it was because of me. So
Okay.
there you go. I got to, as people were coming in about like questions about this Todd case study, it's like I got a little bit of a shout out in the finance textbook.
There you go. There's
Yeah,
a fun trivia fact.
there
Yeah.
you go. Right. I doubt it's still that now. It's been a long time since then.
Awesome. Well, Todd, thanks so much for coming on and sharing, your story. And obviously, as someone who's from Kansas originally, obviously you're a legend in the state of Kansas, unless you're a K-State fan. But and just yeah, just appreciate you coming on. So
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben. Really enjoyed the conversation, and take care. And hopefully we talk again soon.
absolutely.